Mrs. Hales here with day 2 of our waterfall paintings. Today is the day we're going to add color to our pictures. So if you have access to watercolors, you're probably going to want to use watercolors for the mountains and the water and the hills beside the waterfall. But if all you have is crayons or if you have crayons and markers, I'll show you how to use those things as well. All right, let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is finish everything in crayon that you wanted to color with crayon. So I just colored my plants with crayons. So I finished with those, and then I painted my waterfall. So I'm going to be working with royal blue and turquoise and the white of the paper for this. So I'm going to get some blue paint on my brush, and I'm going to paint some lines or strokes from the bottom of each section of the waterfall up towards the top. I'm just working with the blue for this part, and because I want there to be a darker part, a lighter part, and then a white part. So 3 different shades or values of color. So after I use the darker blue, I'm going to come back in with some of my white areas and put turquoise in there. And then I want to make sure to leave some areas white. A lot of times with watercolor or with paint in general, people want to paint the whole thing in, but especially with watercolor, it looks good if you leave some of the areas white. The other thing that this shows or looks like is that where the water is going over the curve of each of these hills, there's a highlight where the area is white on my picture, so it looks lighter. So think lines and strokes with your paint. The other thing that I'm doing is the turquoise paint is gonna blend and meld with the blue paint, and that's okay because it just adds or enhances the watery look of your waterfall. It's okay if the colors blend together and they're both wet. If you made your waterfall up in your mountains, don't forget to paint that part as well. While you're painting your water, you can also paint the area through or behind your plants in the front. If you have any space between your plants, you can paint that blue for the water. Now, when you're painting your hills, you want to have 2 different shades or 2 different values. So what I did was mix black and white together to make a gray. And then I mixed brown in at the bottom area of that gray so that it looks like the bottoms of each of those hills is a little bit darker than the top. So the light is highlighting or shining on the top part of each of these round hills. And then at the bottom, there's not as much light there. So that would be a highlight and a shadow. So you want the bottom of each section to be a little bit darker than the top of each section. So that's what I'm doing now. And you can actually take your paintbrush while your paint is still wet on your paper and push the glob of paint or the darker part of paint down into the bottom section as well. You don't want a straight line right there. You want it to look a little bit more natural. It just makes the hills look a little bit bumpier and a little bit more organic and real. One of the other cool things about painting with watercolor is you can actually layer your colors, and you're supposed to do that with watercolor because it is translucent by nature, which means it lets light through. So you're supposed to layer it. So you can go back into these areas at the bottom of your sections or the bottom of your hills and make them a tiny bit darker even after the first coat dries. I wanted to paint my hills kind of with yellow and green and then a darker green. So I'm going to paint my mountains, and I also want to paint them darker in some areas and lighter on some sides closer to the top so it looks like the sun is shining on them. And I painted very loose and just kind of quick. I didn't want it to look super like perfect or like a photograph. I wanted it to look kind of gestural. Remember, anytime you're painting with watercolor, like here, if my mountains haven't dried and I go to paint my sky, you can see on that second mountain from the right, the yellow paint from my mountain and the green paint is going into my sky a little bit. So if you don't want that to happen, you have to wait for your mountain's paint to dry. That white area at the bottom of my waterfall is the spray from the waterfall. So I'm going to color that white and light blue with crayons. So for the first first section, I'm going to show you how to do it with crayons. And it's exactly the same technique color-wise that I used with the paint. So I'm going to start with my darkest color, which is like a navy blue. Technically, it is called indigo blue crayon. And I'm gonna make the bottom section that color, and then I'm gonna not make a straight line of that color. I'm gonna kind of make an up and down, kind of random dark blue. And then I'm gonna color over that dark blue and a little bit on the white with a turquoise color called blue green, because I want my water to look kind of tropical. And then over that, I'm going to color with robin's egg blue. But again, I'm not going to color this whole section, and it's not going to be a straight line because I want it to look like the light is shining or dappling like the top part of my waterfall. Now, if you want to do it with marker, you're going to do exactly the same thing. Right now, what I'm doing is coloring the water spray for the waterfall. I pushed down really hard and got a lot of white crayon in that area, and then I went over it in little tiny circles just a little bit with the robin's egg blue because I wanted it to look a little bit dimensional. All right, so now I'm going to do the exact same thing with my markers. I am actually using plum, royal blue, and blue lagoon or turquoise markers. So with my purple color, I did the bottom part of my waterfall. And then with the royal blue, I did the middle section. And then I'm going to do turquoise on the top, and I'm going to leave some white at the top. So whatever medium or material you have at home or at school, you should be able to make this work. Obviously, ideally, you would be using watercolor paint. But if you have like acrylic paint or tempera paint at home, you could water that down a lot and do the exact same thing with that. All right, amazing artists. So today you're using the art elements, value and color to finish your waterfall landscapes. I hope you have fun finishing them. Think about where your landscape is. Is it a tropical landscape? Is it a fall landscape scene in Virginia? So you could use color to enhance wherever your landscape is. I will see you next time.